Indiana Jones and the Spear of Destiny. Prologue. Flagstaff. Near Flagstaff, Arizona, February 8th, 1912, noon. The Arizona high desert, a reddish-tan savanna beneath a cloudless, hot sky, stretched towards dark pine forests climbing the rust-colored highland plateaus. 13-year-old Henry Walton, Indiana Jones Jr., with his sharp features and dark brown hair in a practical Boy Scout uniform, rode his American quarter horse, Gabriel. Alright, today's task is really simple. Indy told himself. All I literally have to do is do some basic exploration of a charted above ground cave. It isn't anything crazy. I would be fine. He reached the mesa cliffside, dismounted, and stroked Gabriel. Alright, please stay here, girl, he murmured. I'll be back in roughly an hour or even less. I'll return and we'll go home together, I promise. I won't be gone for long. Inside the cavern, Indy quickly extinguished his flashlight upon hearing voices and seeing lanterns. Crouching, he peered into an illegal excavation site, cluttered with gear and armed men. The leader, Wallace, in a fedora hat, khaki pants, and leather jacket held a prize. I have no idea what he's holding, Indy thought, jaw tight, but I bet it's something with some kind of ancient historical significance. That thing should belong in the museum, not in the hands of someone like you. I need to figure out how I could solve this. Wallace triumphantly raised two limestone and basalt tablets covered in pictographs. There they are, gentlemen. This is the stone tablet of the Black Mesa, made by the ancestral Puebloans some over 1,800 some years ago. Wallace summarized the history. The ancestral Puebloans, or the Anasazi, were a pre-Columbian people who built monumental, grand adobe cities at the Four Corners in what are now the states of Arizona, Utah, New Mexico, and Colorado, which were fortified on mesa tops. They were the ancestors of the modern Pueblo tribes, like the Hopi or the Zuni, a name given by the Spanish conquistadors in the 1540s. Their evolution began in the second late bread maker periods, 100 to 500 CE, and progressed through the third basket maker period, 500 to 700 CE, with turkey domestication and irrigation. The first Pueblo period, 750 to 950 CE, saw above-ground stone masonry in kivas. The second Pueblo period, 950 to 1150 CE, saw diversified settlements, and the third Pueblo period, 1150 to 1350 CE, was the height of their prosperity, marked by grand, advanced, great city dwellings. Wallace addressed the decline. The fourth Pueblo period, 1300 to 1600 CE, was marked by decline. The Puebloans abandoned their grand cities due to severe droughts and floods, potential conflicts with the ancestral Navajo and Apache Native Americans. Spanish claims began in 1539 with the Spanish conquistador and explorer Francisco Vasquez de Coronado's expeditions in the 1540s suppressed resistance and exploited gold. By 1598, permanent Spanish colonial conquests began under the Spanish conquistador and governor of Spanish New Mexico, Juan de Oñata. The early to mid-17th century saw immense challenges, including deaths from torture, epidemics of Old World diseases, and Apache and Navajo raids. Despite the disruptions and aspects of ancestral Pueblo culture, such as religions, language, and agricultural practices, persisted within contemporary Pueblo communities. Indy watched the thieves, spotted semi-automatic rifles and assault rifles. Those guys are carrying semi-automatic rifles, literal machine guns, and assault rifles. Indy thought with disbelief. These Tomb Raiders are practically genuine and literal bandits for archaeology itself. He internally debated. I can leave the cave and claim to cheat Jacobson I managed to do good cave exploring, but I can't just let a priceless historical artifact just fall in the hands of these literal thieves. He quietly inquired, hopelessly. What should I do? The decision was forced when a dynamite explosion echoed from deeper in the cave. More raiders emerged. Sir, I think we just found large collections of gold idols and other treasures gilded in precious metals and gemstones. One crowd shouted, while others cheered. We'll be billionaires, boys! I'll share it with all of you. These artifacts will make us rich. These artifacts will make us tons of money once we sell them to rich buyers overseas, the foreign countries on their local black markets. As Wallace and the others rushed deeper into the cave, Indy dashed into the deserted site. The deserted site, my bad. He saw crates filled with jadeite or bronze masks, gold figurines, feathered headdresses, ceremonial vessels, jewelry, treasures made of seashells, jadeite, platinum, gold, and diamonds. You people are abusing the once precious artifacts that these people once used, centuries before the Spaniards came. Indy grunted. If it wasn't the conquistadors, it's you and your little tomb raiding grunts, Mr. Wallace. Spotting the tablets in a small wooden crate padded with hay and blankets, Indy quickly secured the lid and locked it firmly. He panted quietly, lifting the box. Though he wished he could salvage all the artifacts, the stone tablet of the Black Mesa was his priority. He desperately wanted it safe, on display or studied at a museum. Suddenly, a raider emerged and shouted, Hey, who the hell are you? What do you think you're doing? Indy flinched and bolted up the hilly slope. The man aggressively commanded, Hey you! Stop right there! Put down the damn crate and you won't get hurt! Get your ass back over here right now! Indy dashed out the cave exit, slamming the crate onto Gabriel's saddle before hoisting himself up. Go, Gabriel! We have to leave now! Now! There's no time! He heard the raider's voice screaming from the entrance. I don't know who you are, but get back here now and return us the damn tablet! Indy slammed the reins, and Gabriel sped off, putting distance between them and the cave. Indy took a few deep breaths of relief. I think they're gone now. Man, I have to get home. I have to get home really soon. Indiana's home. 30 minutes later. Still February 8th, 1912, noon. 30 minutes later? Is that enough time? Okay, let's continue. 30 minutes later, Indy reached his suburban home near the outskirts, in the center of the town. Not the outskirts, the center of the town. Yeah, right. He quickly dismounted, grabbed the crates, and rushed onto the porch, unlocking the front door before locking it again. He dashed inside, setting the crate down on the kitchen table, and plopped the lid off. He ran to his father's office. Henry Walton Jones Sr., a medieval archaeologist, was seated at his desk amid stacks of historical textbooks and papers of the mythical Holy Lance, the crucifixion of Christ. He was wearing dark gray pants, a, a white business shirt, and a sleek woolen suit jacket, alongside a thin woolen vest. Near him lay Indy's Siberian husky, Smith. Dad, I found an ancient artifact, Indy announced excitedly. It's pre-Columbian. It was made by the ancestors of the Zuni and Hopi Indians. Henry simply looked up. Well, you're home early, Junior. How was your field day today? Field day today. Okay, back on topic. Indy scuffed. Dad, I just recovered an ancient stone tablet from a group of tomb raiders at a cave on the side of the mesas. You're a medieval archaeologist. I know this isn't your field topic, but I found an ancient artifact. Henry simply replied, That's genuinely rather interesting, and that's quite a groundbreaking achievement. But you shouldn't prematurely celebrate it right now. All discoveries need to be documented and analyzed with at least basic diagnostics. Indy grunted, but Dad, I just found an ancient artifact made by an ancient people centuries before the Spanish and Portuguese conquistadors came to the Americas. Like, what should we do with it? Like, I'm actually 10 moments later, a police car pulled forward and parked in front of the house. Stepping outside from the car was the town's sheriff, police officer. Indiana said to his father reluctantly, Okay, we'll talk about this in a bit. Indy approached the main door and he opened the door to the sheriff. Indy asked in a calm, professional manner, Hello there, Mr. Sheriff. What brings you here today? The sheriff asked. Are you Henry Walton Jones Jr.? Indy replied, Yes, that's me. The sheriff sighed before asking, Well, did you witness a group of tomb raiders excavating illegally archaeological artifacts in a cave outside of town? And you took a pair of ancient stone tablets from the men, boastfully claiming, quote, it belongs in a museum? Indiana replied, Why, of course. They wanted to make money by selling these artifacts to buyers to foreign countries. They wanted. The sheriff stated, Okay. I have to stop you there, kiddo. Look, you're not in any trouble at all. You're completely okay. I'm not going to do anything to you, but that artifact technically belongs to Mr. Wallace. Indy asked, Pardon? Moments later, a staff car, I'm just gonna call it that, yeah, a staff car and a pickup truck pulled forward before parking. And emerging from the truck and exiting from the staff car were the tomb raiders and Wallace himself. Sheriff sighed. Look, I'm afraid you have to give the tablet back to the gentleman. And he responded, Well, why is this allowed to happen? This can't happen to me, surely. The officer responded, Okay. I know this is slightly difficult for you, but you really kind of have to give the artifacts back to the Tomb Raiders. You're not in any trouble. Relax. All you need to do is give them the artifact. Indy grunted before heading to the kitchen table and placing the lid again before reluctantly handing the artifact to the Tomb Raiders, who placed the crate back onto the truck. As the Tomb Raiders left, the sheriff told Indiana, I'm sorry this had to happen, but there was no other option. I hope you have a good rest of your day, though. Before leaving back to the police vehicle and driving off. The truck of the Tomb Raiders also drove off. And a handful of Tomb Raiders were also waiting in the staff car in the back seat. Wallace turned around and he said to Indy, Kid, you're quite a resourceful and intelligent young man, which I am absolutely impressed with. Wallace then placed his fedora hat on Indy's head as a gift. Wallace commented, I have to get going now, but I am positive you can make a great archaeologist one day. From proceeding to walk out the front door, entering the staff car's driver and driving seats, and eventually driving farther and farther out of sight. Indiana smiled slightly to himself, as he knew he would have a brighter future ahead. Chapter 1 Fairfield 26 years after Flagstaff, Barnett College, Fairfield, Connecticut, April 8th, 1938, mid-morning. Well, hold on, guys. Just give me a second, really quickly. Um, just give me a moment, really quickly. Sorry, I forgot to check something. I'll be quick, I promise. Wait, hold on, guys. Just give me a moment, really quickly. Nope, I'm good. Sorry about the delay. My bad. 26 years had passed since the adolescent disaster near Flagstaff, cementing a crucial role in Henry Jones Jr.'s life. Now known simply as Indiana Jones, he split his academic years between the historical professorship. Oh, sorry about that. Professorship at Marshall College and another at Barnett College, just outside New Haven. He was no longer just a history professor. He was a respected archaeologist and a pioneer in the study of pre-Columbian history, a field he'd once defended as a boy. His classroom at Barnett was a classic imposing lecture hall. Rigid grids, rows of dark wooden school desks stretched across the floor, leading to a raised podium backed by a blackboard. The walls had several basic geographical charts, free globes, research tables, bookshelves, a detailed map of the United States and the world, posters displaying geographical keys, and the state and national flags. Oh, wait, hold on. Just give me 1 second. Wait, hold on. Wait, hold on. I forgot to mention. There was a poster as well as a poster displaying college rules. Yeah, as well as the state and national flags. Sorry about that. Jones's own desk Jones's own desk sat discreetly in the left corner. It was the first hour of class. Dr. Jones, neatly groomed with a clean-shaven face, formally combed brunette hair, and glasses, stood before his students. He was dressed professionally, his ensemble consisting of a tie, a long-sleeved business shirt, a thin woolen vest, a sleek woolen blazer jacket, dark blue formal pants, and polished leather shoes, the meticulous design, disguise of the academic. Jones began, his voice authoritative, weaving complex history to a digestible narrative. The Roman Empire was in its time the apex of classical antiquity, a powerful, sophisticated, and technocratically crap, aristocratically and bureaucratically advanced empire. It was not just a monarchy, but as a semi-democratic republic, complete with its own senate and judiciary. Its pace began slowly. Ancient Roman civilization arose from a small Italian city traditionally founded in 753 BCE, from very small Italic villages during the late Bronze Age and early Iron Age following the Bronze Age collapse. After overthrowing its monarchy in 509 BCE to establish the early Roman Republic, Rome began a relentless march toward expansion. By unifying Latin tribes and conquering peoples like the Samnites and the Etruscans, with Rome essentially unifying the Italian peninsula by 290 BCE. Jones paused for effect. Roman dominance continued to sweep the Mediterranean through the Middle and Late Republic periods. This expansion wasn't just brute force, it was the result of relentless military might, strategic alliances, and a flexible, centralized bureaucratic governance that successfully integrated conquered peoples, coupled with economic strength derived from robust agriculture and trade. Rome proved unstoppable. He gestured to the invisible map in the students' heads. Mine's heads, whatever. Throughout the 4th and 3rd century BCE, Rome absorbed countless nations, conquering major powers like the Carthaginian empires during the Punic Wars, a struggle from 264 BCE to 146 BCE. You must also count the Gallic Wars, the Roman Macedonian Wars, and the Illyrian Wars. Ultimately, Jones concluded, leaning slightly on the podium. The annexation of Ptolemaic Egypt in 31 BCE and the death of the famous Roman dictator, general, politician, and statesman Julius Caesar, who had been declared dictator for life, in 44 BCE marked the end of the late Roman Republic. By 47 BCE, it had transitioned into the Roman Empire. The empire reached its zenith during Pax Romana, or Roman peace in Latin, a period between 27 BCE and 180 CE, which brought unprecedented peace, political stability, technological innovation, and economic prosperity. The territorial peak of the empire was reached in 117 CE under Emperor Trajan, spanning from Western Europe to the Balkans, parts of the Middle East, and across northern Africa. Indy began. Now you would learn of the Dark Ages, this unit, which starts from the fall of Rome during late antiquity up to the First Crusade. This unit will start in the 1st century CE and briefly tackle the fall of Rome leading into the Dark Ages. This isn't a coincidence, as the decline of the Western Roman Empire started by the 1st century CE shortly after the prosperity of Pax Romana started to become unstable and decline. Indy paused and he began. The decline of the Western Roman Empire started during the crisis of the 1st century CE, 235 CE to 284 CE, which was marked with instability and foreign invasions, which only got worse due to the splitting of the Roman Empire into 280s CE, originally as two co-regency administrative zones by Emperor Diocletian in 293 CE for being split into the Western and Eastern Roman Empires by Emperor Constantine the Great in 330 CE. And he continued. The decline of the Western Roman Empire continued for the next nearly 2 centuries. The fall of 2 centuries? The fall of the Western Roman Empire was due to political corruption, spread of Christianity, low birth rates, a decrease in the value of production of coins, as well as economic orientation, droughts, floods, and famines, as well as civil wars, which are only accelerated by invasions by Germanic people from Rome's northern and western frontiers, from Germanic peoples like the Joites, Saxons, Britons, Angles, Ostrogoths, Visigoths, Goths, Bulgars, Franks, and later the Turco-Mongolic-led cavalry Huns from Central Asia, who were related to the Mongols centuries later. Indy continued. By 476 CE, the Western Roman Empire fully collapsed into a power vacuum of barbarian kingdoms who settled on the former Roman lands in the Western Roman Empire. These notable kingdoms include the kingdom of the Ostrogoths, the kingdom of the Burgundians, the kingdom of the Franks, the kingdom of the Vandals, and Romano-Celtic kingdoms in Britain, and later the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, which later became Britain after the 6th century CE. The Eastern Roman Empire would become the Byzantine Empire later on, and would peak during the next 2 centuries, especially under Empress Theodora and Emperor Justinian I the Great. The Byzantine Empire, spanning across northern Africa, the Middle East, Anatolia, the Balkans, and even occupied Italy and southern Spain briefly during this period in the 6th to 7th centuries CE. The Byzantine Empire would have lasted 1,000 more years after Rome's fall, before collapsing in 1453 CE from the Ottoman invaders. Indy concluded, from the fall of Rome in 476 CE up to the First Crusade in 1095 CE will be a period called the Early Medieval Period, or the Dark Ages, and would be a period of widespread illiteracy, anarchy, upheaval, disease, superstition, and warfare across Western Europe, particularly during its first few centuries. Chapter 2. The Empire of Charlemagne. Barnet College, Fairfield, Connecticut, April 9th, 1938, mid-morning. It was the next day at the first hour class period. Indy began lecturing. Now the Byzantine Empire peaked during Justinian I and Theodora the Great. The Byzantine Empire experienced immense territory, immense economic wealth, and a centralized federal bureaucracy across the eastern Mediterranean. Now, although Western Europe was marked by Germanic, quote, barbarian kingdoms, the heavy decline in urban living, loss of literacy, decreased trade, lack of proper education, and disrepair of Roman roads and aqueducts, Indiana explained. Yet, despite all of this, Christianity became a unifying force in Western Europe ever since the Roman Emperor Constantine legalized it in 313 CE. So during the fall of Rome and into the Dark Ages, Christianity transformed from a small Near Eastern Abrahamic religion heavily tied to Judaism to a widespread major religion across Europe and beyond. Christian ministers, monks, theologians, teachers, priests, preachers, and nuns preserved contemporary early medieval history as well as major literacy during classical antiquity. Indy began. Now, Clovis the First, in 496 CE, who had once overthrown the last Roman governor of Roman Gaul, converted from Germanic paganism to Christianity, and Clovis united warring Frankish tribes in the former Roman province of Gaul, establishing the Merovingian dynasty, the kingdom that would become France. And later, Charlemagne the First, a descendant of Clovis centuries later, became the king of the Franks from 768 CE and the king of the Lombards from 774 CE, and he was declared the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation by Pope Leo III from 800 CE up until his death in 814 CE. As for the title of Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, it would be a title that would last up till until the turn of the 19th century. Indy stated. Now, Charlemagne's reign was marked by military conquest, as well as the reforms of the Carolingian Renaissance, with reforms and developments in schooling, education, law, currency, medicine, and culture, alongside a powerful alliance with the Church, which managed to slowly bring Western Europe out from the Dark Ages and into a better future. Now, the other Germanic barbarian kingdoms underwent a process of Romanization, fragmentation, and eventual consolidation to the foundations of later early medieval era European nations. They were unstable, often fighting with each other, and the Eastern Roman / Byzantine Empire leading to constant fragmentation, shifting borders, and eventual assimilation or conquest. Indy paused before beginning. Now, following the collapse of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century CE, there was no longer any centralized bureaucratic power, which led to insecurity. This led to fragmented authority and independent local warlords who fought each other. By the 8th century CE, this system started to take a more reformed route in Western Europe, which began particularly in France, with Frankish kings creating military structures to deal with Vikings and other raids, relying on warriors who were granted lands or fiefs for loyalty and service. The 9th and 10th century CE led to the gradual formalization of the medieval feudal system. Indiana briefly explained. Now, in the medieval feudal system, the monarchs, queens or kings, were the nominal owners of all the land, who distributed it to gain loyal military supporters. These were included upper vassals, or lords, upper vassals and lower lords, lower vassals, or barons, or lords, also called lords. Who? Oh, sorry about that. Sorry about that. Oops. Sorry about that. Who managed large territories, provided the king with knights for war. The knights were the elite private soldiers who rode on horseback. The soldiers and their horses wore strong iron slash chainmail clad armor, and they used lances, swords, crossbows, pikes, shields, halberds, and bows and arrows. The knights held smaller parcels of land and served as the primary imperial military force. There was also the peasants at the bottom of the feudal system, who were the working slash lower middle class of the kingdom, who were often, quote, tied to the land, meaning they cannot leave without permission, but were granted protection from invaders. Indy then stated, however, there were also the serfs, who were peasants, but were owned by the knights and barons, and were the lowest class of the feudal pyramid, who couldn't leave their land with no permission. Serfs lived in general poverty, and their land was nearly as bad as people enslaved in chattel slavery. Indy continued. Feudalism became widespread across Europe in the 10th and 11th century CE. It was characterized by a hierarchy where nobles offered protection to peasants in exchange for labor and goods, solidifying into a complex social and economic system, with feudalism having brought Europe to an organized political order by this point, as it was a hierarchical structure providing security and basic functioning for such a chaotic society. Another part of feudalism was chivalry, or chivalric language. This was a military and religious code of honor. It emphasized bravery, loyalty, honor, piety, and courtesy, blended militaristic ideals with Christian morality and courtly manners. Chivalry essentially taught knights to not target non-combatants, especially women, the elderly, Christian clergymen, and children, and to show equal, unbiased, consensual, platonic, and protective respect to women. Indy paused before explaining. Another dominant economic and social system in medieval Europe was called manorialism. Manorialism is something rather different from medieval feudalism, but they tie into each other, as manorialism was medieval Europe's economic slash social system where a lord's self-sufficient estate or manor was worked by dependent peasants or even serfs who gave labor, crops, or money for protection and land use, creating a hierarchical, localized economy based on land, not just military ties. Moments later, the school bell rang and all the students grabbed their school items and backpacks. They left their desks. Students left through the classroom door. They headed to their own second hour class. Andy then informs, by the way, please remember to do the homework assignment on the fall of Rome and the Byzantine Empire and the typo, sorry. Byzantine Empire and the rise of hold on. The rise in and the rise of feudalism. Just wait, hold on, just give me a second. The rise of feudalism and hold on, just okay, sorry about that. Sorry. Just give me a second. Let me try it again. Sorry. Indy then informed. By the way, please remember to do this homework assignment on the fall of Rome and Byzantine Empire and the rise of feudalism and medieval European kingdoms. Please remember to do that. It's Chapter 3: The First Crusade. Barnet College,
Fairfield, Connecticut, April 10th, 1938, mid-afternoon. It was now the last hour class of the day at Barnett College. The April sun shone high through the windows in Jones's class. Jones spoke. The Viking Age was the period between 793 CE to 1066 CE when Norsemen, known as Vikings, undertook large-scale raiding, colonizing, conquest, and trading throughout Western and Central Europe, and even parts of Northern Africa and the Middle East. The Viking Age applies to not only to their homelands of the Scandinavian peninsula, but also to any place significantly settled by Scandinavians during the period. Although few of the Scandinavians of the Viking Age were Vikings in the sense of being engaged in piracy, yet they were often referred to as Vikings, as well as Norsemen. Indy continues. The Vikings, in the sense of piracy, as you may know them, were Scandinavian warriors who raided and colonized Europe. The Viking era began with the Viking raid at Lindisfarne Monastery in 793 CE and ended in 1066 CE with the Battle of Stamford Bridge. This was when the English army under King Harold Godwinson fought against Norwegian Vikings and English rebels under the command of King Harold Hardrada. Although the Battle of Stamford Bridge was not Viking, I meant an English victory, Godwinson was killed in action during the Battle of Hastings against Norman troops led by Duke William III the Conqueror during the Norman conquest of England. This resulted in a Norman victory against the English. Indy affirmed. Now, the Battle of Stamford Bridge has traditionally been presented as marking the end of the Viking Age. Although major Scandinavian campaigns continued in the British Isles and mainland Western Europe in the next few decades, this was the last significant Norse military threat in Western Europe, ending an era of large-scale Viking expansion and power projection. Indy stated. Now, although you won't be learning about the Norman conquest of England really, it was a crucial turning point, ending the Dark Ages by fundamentally reshaping Western Europe. The conquest linked England to continental Europe, fusing cultures of Anglo-Saxon and French cultures, transforming languages by using French and Latin words into Old English, forming Middle English. The Norman conquest also replaced the Anglo-Saxon elites with French aristocrats. There was also a centralizing power under William the Conqueror and establishing strong feudalism, and this would have been linked by Norman expansionist and culture and marked the transition from the Dark Ages to the High Middle Ages. Indiana paused before beginning. Now, the Crusades were a series of military conflicts launched by the papacy between 1095 and 1291 CE against Muslim nations and dynasties in the Middle East and Northern Africa, but particularly in the Holy Land, in the land of Israel, in what is now the Mandate of Palestine. Well, just give me a second. Which is now the Mandate of Palestine. Palestine. It would. Oh crap! Sorry. Just give me a second. Sorry. But particularly to the Holy Lands, in the land of Israel, or what is not, or the Holy Lands, in what is now the Mandate of Palestine. That's the Israel-Palestine region, by the way. Oh, wait, also as well as parts of Syria, Jordan, and Lebanon. Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. Sorry about all the grammatical. Sorry about all the spelling and pronunciation errors. I'm sorry about that.
There were 8 major crusades between 1095 CE and 1291, as well as the Northern Crusades from 1147 CE to 1410 CE in Eastern Europe against pagan peoples, as well as the Iberian Crusades and the Reconquista in the Iberian Peninsula, spanning from the 11th century up till the 1490s, which resulted in a decisive Catholic Christian victory, with the last Muslim stronghold, Granada, having been defeated by the Catholics in 1492. In the Explained. There were also crusades against other, quote, heretical Christians from 1107 CE to 1588 CE, alongside the popular crusades from 1096 CE to 1320 CE, which were unofficial crusades in the Middle East that were sanctioned by the Catholic Church, yet unofficially led by crusading movements for the time. Now, the only crusade you will be learning about is the First Crusade, as it was the turning point leading to the end of the Dark Ages. Indy paused before starting. The First Crusade was a popular expedition and pilgrimage by Western European Christians launched by Pope Urban II to retake the Holy Land as well as Jerusalem from Muslim rule. The First Crusade was also intended to defend Christians living in Byzantine lands and Christians in the Middle East and Iberian Peninsula who were being threatened with Muslim conquest. Between August 15th, 1095 and August 12th, 1099 CE, Crusader armies in the Byzantines fought back against Muslim nations, particularly the Seljuk Empire, the Fatimid Caliphate, the Danishmenids, and the Emirate of Rum. I don't know. Indy continues. The First Crusade occurred in the Levant and Anatolia and resulted in a Crusader victory, the restoration of most of Anatolia to the Byzantines. The Crusaders successfully captured Jerusalem and established the Crusader states, the county of Edessa, the Principality of Antioch, the county of Tripoli, and the Kingdom of Jerusalem. The First Crusade sparked European revival into the high medieval era with new ideas exposing Westerners to Eastern goods/culture, to the Middle East and Northern Africa, the Indian subcontinent, China, and Japan. This boosted Italian cities, Venice and Genoa, and weakened feudal lords, selling land/freeing serfs for funds, strengthening kings, and encouraging learning/travel, which laid the groundwork for the European Renaissance later on. Indiana then affirmed. Although the First Crusade was a success, most of the Crusades in the Holy Lands were utter failure, which demanded complex religious, social, and economic institutions, including crusade indulgences, military orders, and the taxation of clerical income. Over time, the Crusading movement expanded to include campaigns against pagans, Christian dissidents, and other enemies of the papacy, promoted with similar spiritual rewards and continuing into the 18th century. The school bell rang, and the students began to pack their school items and leave at the end and were beginning to leave at the end of the school day. Indy affirmed, "Goodbye, everyone. Please remember to do the assignment called The First Crusade in High Medieval Europe. It shouldn't take too long. Hopefully it's a simple, short, and easy assignment. Have a nice day, everybody." Moments later, nearby, all the students left. A man entered the class. The person was in his late 30s and was slightly above average height at this time. He wore a leather belt, dark blue trousers, polished brown boots, a white business blazer, a red tie, a similar blue business suit, and brownish and brownish brown. Oh crap! And oh, sorry. And sorry for all the stuttering. And balding, brownish blackish hair. that was naturally stagnant. The man, eh, the man asked, "Excuse me, but are you Indiana Jones, or by your entire name, Henry Walton Jones Jr.?" Chapter 4. The Spear of Destiny. Indiana replied, "Why, yes, that's me." The man introduced himself. "I'm Brendan Grayson. I'm your father's financial advisor, and what I'm holding is a current journal of your father, if it is to be believed." Grayson handed a small handheld gray-lettered black journal to Jones. Grayson stated, "I'm afraid your father, Henry Jones Sr., has gone missing in Rosslyn, Scotland, in the United Kingdom. That's just outside of Scotland's capital, which is Edinburgh, by the way." Indy asked, "The UK? What, how, when, and why in the world was my father doing there? What the hell was he doing in Britain that was so special?" Grayson sighed before responding. "Well, he went to Great Britain. Oh wait, during the first week of April, which was technically a week ago in reality, he traveled there to look for the so-called Holy Lands." Indy's eyes dilated. He asked concerningly, "The Holy Lands? From the Gospels and the New Testament in the Christian Bible?" Grayson quietly nodded slightly, despondently. Grayson stated, "Your father seemed to be a medieval archaeologist. He was particularly interested in Judeo-Christian artifacts of antiquity. According to his journal, he believed the Holy Grail, or at least concurrent evidence leading to it, is directly below the Rosslyn Chapel, right outside the town." Indy asked, "Well, what do you mean, Mr. Grayson?" Grayson responded, "Well, according to Henry's journal, in 34 CE, after the crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth, Saint Joseph of Arimathea took the Holy Lands to Roman Britannia, establishing Christianity there and founding the monastery of Glastonbury Abbey. The Holy Lands, however, disappeared for centuries until an unidentified Christian pilgrim in Jerusalem found the Holy Lands at the Basilica of Zion in 570 CE, over 537 years later." Grayson continued, "At the Sassanid conquest of Jerusalem during the Byzantine Sassanid War of 602 CE to 628 CE, the lands of Longus had been captured, and a part of the pointed edge was taken to Rosslyn Chapel, and the rest of the main lands was taken to the Syrian deserts." Grayson informed Indy, "Apparently, your father wanted to find the partial part of the Spear of Destiny, or at least find concrete evidence of its definitive location." Indiana sighed and pondered at Grayson. "What should I do then, Master Grayson?" Grayson replied, "I'll book you a first-class flight to Edinburgh. You can take a flight, or more preferably, a rental car and take a quick drive to Rosslyn. The Rosslyn Chapel is right outside of the town's outskirts." Indy asked, "When will the nearest flight take off?" Grayson replied, "The nearest flight will take off next Monday, on April 13th, at the Edinburgh International Airport." Grayson then told Indiana, "Dr. Jones, I want you to take your father's journal until you return with your father. You will go to Great Britain and you will search for Henry and the Holy Lands." Indy nodded his head and affirmed, "Don't you worry. I will do my absolute hardest to find my father and the Holy Spirit. And mark my words, Grayson, I won't stop until I find my father once more. I'm absolutely positive this will happen." Wait, hold on, just give me a second, guys. Whoa. Yo, guys, I'm not sure if you can hear anything outside, but it's actually hailing so hard. It's actually it's raining literal hail outside. I'm not sure if you can hear anything, but it's it's raining hail outside, and it's quite aggressive if you ask me. Not like that, of course. But back on topic. Chapter 5. Medina. Roslin, near Edinburgh, Scotland, United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. April 14th, 1938, mid-afternoon. Roslin was a village just south of Edinburgh, Scotland. It was mid-afternoon in a small town. The streets of Roslin featured the central high street, mixing pedestrianized areas with shops flanked by historic buildings, stone cottages with flower boxes, and traditional pubs. There was also quieter residential lanes that might be cobbled or lined with terraced houses, condominium buildings, and gardens leading to green spaces like village greens. The streets also had planted trees, raised sidewalks with lampposts across the main city streets. It had been a day since Indiana Jones had flown to Edinburgh. He was now in Roslin, and Indy was meeting Gina Medina. Gina was 38 years old, and she was a medieval archaeologist and historian who was assisting Indiana Jones in search for Henry Jones and the Holy Lands. Gina was slightly taller than Indy, as a matter of fact. She was from Venice. She had richly colored blonde hair that descended right at her that had richly blonde hair that descended right at her neck. She also had a rather sharp and chiseled jawline for a woman. Gina had a smooth, gentle face, and she had a slightly muscular, toned body for a woman. Gina had a slightly distinct jawline, and she wore a light gray large covering skirt as well as a large black blazer suit, alongside a long-sleeved business blazer shirt, a slightly thin and sleek woolen vest, and black polished formal high heels. Indy was wearing the same brown fedora hat, the same hat he was gifted to by Wallace. Indiana wore a leather brown jacket with a white business shirt and a black tie, as well as khaki pants and leather work boots. Indiana was also wearing a leather belt alongside a holster of two TT Dirty pistols, a crowbar, backup magazines, a flashlight, a bullwhip, and a machete. Gina asked, "So, we're searching for the Spear of Longus, huh?" Indy replied, hysterically, "That's only half true. This is more than just excavating the Holy Lands. This is a search expedition to find and reunite with my father." Gina said, "Well, I'm really sorry that your father disappeared at the Roslin Chapel." Indy responded, It's fine. I'm pretty confident my father is still alive. I highly doubt he got killed by someone deliberately in some cruel crime case of foul play. Because during that past week, I would have gotten some earlier confirmation that my father got killed by some sick pleb while in Britain, before I got told of his disappearance by Mr. Grayson. Indy began. Okay. So the Holy Lance, or the Spear of Destiny, the Holy Spear, or the Spear of Longus, or the Lance of Longus, is a Christian relic that was allegedly the lance that pierced the side of Jesus Christ of Nazareth when he was hung at the cross during the crucifixion of Jesus. Gina spoke. At the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, in the Gospels of the New Testament, particularly the Gospel of John, the Romans planned to break Jesus' legs, a method of hastening death during the crucifixion, known as a crucifigurium. Gaium. Crucifigurium. I don't know how to say it. I'm sorry. I actually don't know how. Jesus's followers wanted to ensure that he died before the start of the Sabbath at sundown on Friday so that he could be promptly laid to rest. Burials are not traditionally permitted on a Sabbath. Just before they did so, they noticed that Jesus was already dead and that there was no reason to break his legs. Gina continued, and to make sure Jesus Christ was dead, a Roman cavalry soldier named Longus was ordered to stab Jesus' side stomach with a lance, as Longus initially had bad eyesight. But then, as Longus stabbed Jesus with the holy lance, holy blood and water poured onto Longus's face, which cured his blindness. After the miraculous events of the crucifixion, Longus retired from the Roman legions and he converted to Christianity, converted and becoming the first known non-Jewish Christian convert. Saint Longus became a Christian priest, theologian, monk, and preacher at Christian Cappadocia in what is now eastern Turkey. Yet Longus was martyred and beheaded, with his blood miraculously healing the governor who ordered his death, fulfilling a legend of divine intervention. Indy asked, "So what are the abilities of the Holy Lance?" Gina replied, "Oh, the Lance of Longus can grant indefinite invincibility, victory in battle, divine protection, and foresight to its owners. Tales credited it for military triumphs and world rule. Yet the Lance of Longus has the ability of creating imminent death or downfall, and the spear was used maliciously for murderous and genocidal purposes." Indy replied, "Wow, the Lance of Longus really is a powerful, glorious weapon of divine justice and protection that will aggressively retaliate if its owner is to if it were to be used for genocidal, autocratic atrocities against innocent people." Indy then told Gina, "We should get to the chapel now so we can find my father. I really hope he's doing okay." Chapter 6. The Chapel and the Catacombs. The Roslin Chapel's exterior was a breathtaking tapestry of intricate, mysterious stone carvings covering nearly every surface, featuring Gothic architecture. There were statues of gargoyles and medieval winged dragons, with elements of heraldic symbols, and even some Celtic pagan motifs. The stonework also had arches, pillars, and buttresses, all intricately modeled and decorated. The Roslin Chapel's interior is an overwhelming spectacle of intricate, detailed stone carvings covering nearly every surface, featuring a star-ribbed vaulted ceiling with celestial symbols. The unique appurtenance pillar. There was also rotunda artwork of various biblical scenes across the Old and New Testaments, which were well illustrated. The ceiling was a barrel vaulted roof divided into compartments with designs with stars, suns, moons, lilies, and roses. Gina says, "We're inside the Roslin Chapel. This very building was built in the 14th century by William Sinclair, the first Earl of Caithness. This building even had a groundbreaking opening ceremony back in 1456. Indy asked, "Do you see any sign of the Holy Lance?" Gina sighed. "Well, I don't see anything out of the ordinary. No sign of your father and the spear, unfortunately." Indy replied, "Well, thanks anyways, but we'll find Henry eventually. It's just somewhat difficult to find him, as this was the last place he was supposedly spotted." Indy then glanced over at the tiled flooring between the pulpit and the mass seating. There was a large, light gray concrete deep slate square tile with slightly small, pale white quartz tile and shallow constructed bowls X in the middle of the square. Indy told Gina, Gina, look over there. There's a gigantic X in the middle of that quartz tile. There might actually be something below the church. Let's go excavate her. Indy rushed over to the deep slate tile, and he threw his and Gina's field equipment and excavated items. Gina yelled, Jones, what the hell are you doing? This is a literal church. You can't just casually do that. Indy immediately pulled out a shovel and pickaxe and immediately started slamming the pickaxe against the tile as it began getting scratched up, with tile debris getting kicked upward occasionally. Indiana cried. Well, there's a huge contrasting X in the middle of the church. There has to be something underground that has to be connected to the Lance of Longus. Gina yelled, I understand that, but this is a literal church. You can't start vandalizing their property. What if there's literally nothing down there? What if that tile was just decorative? And it didn't have any real meaning? Then what do we do, By this point, Jones was already digging through the tile, with tile debris, gravel, and dirt covering the surrounding area. Indiana exclaimed, Well, there probably is something below this X, Miss Medina. The Holy Spirit might be underground here. Henry could be underground. You can never know what could be underground in this structure. Besides, if there's nothing here, we can get the hell out of here before anyone shows up. It'll be fine for the both of us. Gina shouted, How and why would your literal father be in some secret underground chamber below us that we're just discovering? Just then, as Indy finished digging up the whole tile, with quartz and deep slate pieces thrown all over the floor, with dirt, gravel, andesite, and stone covering the floor, Indy looked down and he saw a metallic ladder leading to an underground chamber. Indy remarked, Well, I guess I was right, huh? There is an underground set of tunnels below the church. Gina cried. Well, you made a mess here. And guess who's gonna fix that tile, Indy scoffed. Don't worry about that, Gina. Let's just search this damn chamber. Indiana and Gina climbed down the ladder into the darkened tunnels of the Roslyn catacombs. Seeing that the catacombs was nearly pure darkness, apart from the ladder's entrance, Indy pulled out his flashlight, and Indy also pulled out her own flashlight, and he began to search the Roslyn catacombs. Indy jokingly commented, Gina, this reminds me of your sex life. In other words, you're completely devoid of a boyfriend slash husband slash soon-to-be husband. Gina snapped. Don't speculate anything about my personal life. I just don't think constant casual sex is a good thing for your physical, emotional, and mental health. That's it. And he commented, All right, whatever you say, Miss Medina. Indy and Gina looked around the Roslyn catacombs. The Roslyn catacombs were a suffocating labyrinth of narrow subterranean corridors carved directly into the cold, weeping bedrock. In the absolute pitch blackness, the air feels heavy and stagnant, smelling of damp air, earth, and the faint metallic tang of ancient mineral deposits. There were even scattered bone piles scattered on the floor. Gina asked, Do you think these are human bones? Indy responded, I highly doubt those are human remains. I think those might be the bones of some domesticated animals, particularly the remains of horses. Gina scoffed, What the hell are horse bones doing down here? Indiana replied, I have genuinely no clue, but I think it's better that we don't know how these remains got down here. Eventually, Indy and Gina found a large old wooden crate, gilded in pieces of platinum, silver, and gold. Once Jones and Gina shined their flashlights at
at the chest. The chest's gold and platinum and silver reflected and stood out in the dark catacombs. The chest was also slowly decaying with cobwebs and debris building on it. Indy carefully approached the chest, and and he just, and he stared at the chest in slight awe. Gina pleaded, "You aren't going to you aren't going to touch that with your hands, right?" Indy replied, "Why, of course not. I'm going to use my machete and crowbar to hack open this chest. I don't even have any gloves with me, so I can't possibly use my hands." Indy slammed his machete against the chains repeatedly, causing small bits of metallic debris and sparks flying. Thankfully, Indy was harnessed. Oh, wait, hold on, wait, I skipped a line, sorry. Indy carefully approached the chest, where he noticed a reinforced wooden plank with iron gilding over two steel bars alongside two series of chains. Indy slammed the wooden plank once with his machete, causing it to get damaged. Indy slammed the plank twice more. Before the before the wooden plank fell onto the ground in two pieces. Indy then slammed his machete against the chains repeatedly, causing small bits of metallic debris and sparks flying. Thankfully, Indy was. Oh wait, no, sorry, not harmed. I meant unharmed. Sorry, my bad. Sorry. What happened again? Unharmed by any of the debris and both collections of chains. And both collections of chains simply collapsed onto the floor with a slight metal slithering clank. Indy then holstered his machete before pulling out his crowbar. Indiana then gently inserted the crowbar's tip against the gaping of the chest's lid. Indy then forced upwards the lid with his crowbar. Alright, we'll be stopping the video for today here.